first thing we're going to do is I'm going to do common denominators on this part right here. Okay, so I'm going to kind of parse this out from that 1 over thing just so it's not, so it's just not all over the place, and just rewrite it real quick. Okay, and you want common denominators, and the reason for that, if you notice the choices here, we have one denominator here, one denominator here. Technically, this is divided by 1. Technically, this is divided by 1. So all of them are just basically one fraction for the possible answer, and there will always be one of these on every SAT you ever take. So definitely make sure you understand that part, that it's not a bunch of fractions, it's just one, so that's why we're combining these. The common denominator for these would be, the easiest way to do it is just to multiply by the denominator. Just kind of, you're basically zigzagging what the denominators are for each of these. So this one's x plus 3, so I'm multiplying it by this other one, this x plus 2. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this other one here. I'm going to multiply it by x plus 3, and then I'm going to multiply this one by x plus 3 as well. Okay, now you can see, I'm going to highlight it here. This is the same denominator as this. Okay, since it's the same denominator, you can combine them just like regular fractions essentially. So you can combine the tops here. I'm going to add this x plus 3 plus the x plus 2, and you end up with 2x plus 5. And then we're dividing it by the common denominator. It doesn't matter which one you do, they're the same thing. So it's going to be x plus 3 times x plus 2. The order does not matter for multiplication, so I chose this one right here. I could have chose the other one as well. Okay, so if you remember, I parsed out that bottom part there. That's the red part here. So what I can do now is take this and throw it back in where that is. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. And you end up with 1. Make that a little bolder. So you're going to end up with 1 over 2x plus 5 divided by x plus 3 times x plus 2. Okay. Now, does anybody know when it's 1 over what you do with that? Does anyone remember the rule for that? What to do with the fraction if it's 1 over a fraction? Okay, well, I'll show you. Here's a hint. If I did 1 over, I don't know, let's just do 1 over 1/2. So if you take 1 and you divide it by 1/2. Okay, what's the answer? If you do 1 and divide it by 1/2. 1/2? Anyone else have any other? It's kind of a tricky question to look at because I said you're dividing by 1/2. You're not dividing in half. Yes, it's 2. Okay. The way of looking at this is you go 1 times and then you just flip this. You multiply by the reciprocal. So then it ends up being 2. Okay. And you can think of it this way. You need 2 halves to make 1. If you have 1/2, if you have 1/2 of a half, that's 1/4. Okay. So I'm not trying to pick on you, Scott. But if you did 1/2 times 1/2, you'd get 1/4. But if you did 2 times 1/2, you'd get 1. Okay. Dividing by 1/2 is different than dividing in half. If you divide something by, in half, that's splitting it in 2. But you're dividing it as how many, if you have 1 pizza, how many halves can you have? Well, you have 2 halves in a pizza. So the answer is 2. You don't really need to worry about that. The main thing that you need to know is when you do 1 over something, it's the same thing as just flipping it. So actually, before I get rid of this, I did 1 over 1/2. It's the same thing as just flipping 1/2 to 2 over 1. So what you can do, it's multiplying by the reciprocal, is you can just, oops, hold on, let me get rid of that. What you can do is just flip this thing right here. So it ends up being x plus 3 times x plus 2 all over 2x plus 5. So now if we look at our answers here, what's the answer based on that? Even though it doesn't match it exactly, but what's the closest one that matches that? B, okay? And the reason why it would be B here is because you can see that you're dividing by this 2x plus 5. And that's the only one that has that in there. Now, if you wanted to, you can expand this out, this x plus 3 times x plus 2. Expand that out, but it eats up some of your time on the SAT test. The SAT. So I advise not doing it that way. But if you want, by all means, then do it. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Again, there's always going to be one of these on every single SAT test. They always have something where it's a fraction inside of a fraction, like this original here. I'm going to highlight it. This part right here, where it's a 1 over a bunch of other fractions. You just have to know how to simplify it, essentially.